worst cave deaths of all time.
Starting with
The Manchester Hole Tragedy. In November 2005, 14-year-old Joseph Lister, along with 10 classmates, including his friends
10?
Charlie and Amy from his school, his math teacher,
Shout
and a
out Amy.
17-year-old caver volunteer who knew the cave system well, decided to
That's an
explore
odd
the
group.
Nidderdale Caves in North Yorkshire, England. The
Oh,
cave
no.
system is famous for its 20 entrances, and the group chose to enter through Manchester Hole, a small opening in the ground that leads to a huge cave. They descended through a hole into a massive chamber, about the size of a football field, with a few inches of water
Wow.
on the
Wait, that's
floor
actually
and
huge.
a 50-foot high
Yeah.
ceiling hung with stalactites. After
I would do that. That kind of sounds awesome.
I think I would too.
It seems like it was a school trip, though. That's kind of a crazy school trip to do. To go caving?
I
That's
mean-
insane.
That's what happens in Europe. They don't have those regulations.
Well, that also seems pretty safe too, if they're going into such a massive cave, but it looks like they're about to go down deeper into maybe a lesser explored section.
I would also want my helper to be older than 17, like at least be 20 plus.
Right, you want them to have experience.
Yeah, 17. They're not even, like, I don't know how you call yourself an
At least
experienced
18.
cave diver.
At least 18.
Yeah, I want you to be able to buy a vape if you're taking me into a cave.
Exactly. That's strike number 1 for me.
passing through, they entered a tunnel and climbed down a muddy path into a second, smaller chamber that still held all 11 students and had shallow water. The
Okay.
tunnel then narrowed sharply,
Danger.
forcing them to crawl on hands
Yep,
and knees for
that's-
40 feet through twisting
that's
passages.
where I would turn
At
around.
the bottom, a muddy stream soaked their clothes, but led to a small chamber where they could stand again. The math teacher was the last to follow the group.
Okay.
When he reached the small chamber, the guide became very worried because the water level was much higher than usual, something
Oh,
he had never
God.
seen before. Even
Okay.
though it was cold and windy outside, there was no
No.
forecast of rain.
I was just
Everyone
about to
was
say
standing in
something. If ever you are in a cave, right? Because caving, I know a lot of people go inside caves. You know, most of the time it's okay to go inside of a cave, especially a frequented cave, especially if you have an expert. But if you ever see water in a cave, you gotta be super careful because they can fill up extremely quickly with flood water. And then if you get stuck in there, you're gonna be trapped for such a long time, or you could possibly die.
Yeah, I think that's
so
probably the worst way to go is like drowning in a cave.
Yeah.
Rather than just getting stuck.
Exactly, yeah, because you know your fate before it's even happening. Like you could see the water slowly filling up.
Yeah, exactly. And you're trying to crawl as fast as you can, and then you probably have some buddies behind you, and then you can hear them gargling on water as you're still trying to go, and oh my
That's
god,
one of my
I don't
fears.
even want to
Math
think
teacher,
about it.
yeah, your math teacher is screaming out like, "What's the square root of 2?" And you're like, "I don't know, man." And then you die.
And then you learn that you failed your last exam.
Yeah, terrible.
Even though it was cold and windy outside, there was no forecast of rain. Everyone was standing in freezing water. Their
Sue
boots
the
were
weather
filled
app.
with water, and there was hardly any space to move. To make matters worse, the water kept rising, soon reaching
Why?
above the knees of some students. The guide, confused by the sudden flooding, knew they had to get out quickly.
There we go.
So they decided to retreat. The math teacher went first, followed by the
no.
students, one by one, taking the small
Okay.
passage back to the previous
Okay.
chamber.
Someone's gonna
At
get
one
stuck.
point, the teacher and 9 of the students were inside the tunnel when a sudden surge
No!
of cold water
Oh
flooded the
my-
chamber. The guide, along with Amy and Joseph,
No!
were the last
Oh
to
my
exit the
God.
chamber and enter the tunnel. The tunnel was crowded with students struggling against the rising
Oh
water.
my gosh.
Realizing the
Way.
danger, the guide, Amy, and Joseph went back to the previous chamber to catch their breath.
No.
But the water kept rising,
no,
and they
no,
were
no,
nearly
no, no, no,
submerged.
no, no, no,
Taking
no,
a
no.
deep breath, they re-entered the tunnel. This time,
No.
the tunnel was clear enough for them to move. The guide led the way, with Amy and Joseph following closely.
No, there's only
However,
2.
In the
Oh my
previous
God.
chamber, the guide pushed Amy out to safety, but Joseph never made it out.
No!
The water continued to rise, even in the chamber. The guide tried to go back for Joseph, but the math teacher insisted on taking the other 10 students to
my
safety.
God.
Tragically, Joseph drowned in the narrow tunnel, where there was
Oh. That's insane. And they're still not out of the cave yet, by the way. There's still more cave to get out of.
To be honest, though, it could have been way worse. I know, like, it sucks that this kid died, but if 9 of them still got out in this instance, I think it's pretty good.
Imagine if that happened like halfway through, then everybody that was behind him would have been done.
Yeah, because
he-
he was basically plugging it up.
Yeah, obviously it's not the best case scenario, but it could have been worse. Alex, right?
Yeah, only one person got trapped in Manchester's hole.
That scene from earlier when the water's filling up, like that's a nightmare. Imagine being on like a submarine or a Titanic, and like you see the water level rising, and you have to take your last breath at the top,
That part is insane. The fact that they were able to hold their breath and then get through a tiny little cave section and then make it to the next air pocket is incredible.
God, this is sad. Why do we keep watching these, man? Stop liking these videos.
No air. After the incident, the group went to the surface to alert emergency personnel, and they emerged under a blue sky with strong winds, but not a single drop of rain. It was later revealed that strong winds had blown water out of the nearby Scar House Reservoir that day. Thousands of gallons of water were forced into the river below, causing it to rise 4 feet in just 1 hour. This surge of water drained directly into the cave system. Normally, water slowly trickles through and seeps into the groundwater, but that day, the huge volume overwhelmed the cave's ability to drain, triggering flash flooding throughout the system in just a few minutes.
That is so unlucky.
Cave rescuers arrived within 20 minutes after being called. By then, the water had already receded to below their knees. They found the lifeless body of Joseph Lister in the narrow tunnel before the final chamber. Neil Moss incident.
Wow.
That's got to be the worst job ever. Being like a cave rescuer, because I'm sure half of the incidents, like, you're going to find what is just a corpse at that point. And it must be so sad.
I really hope that one day this YouTuber makes videos where they are successful saves, where like it's a close call, but there's still hope, and like it's like the most extraordinary cave saves of all time, not deaths.
That would be nice to watch. Guys, please comment down below if you guys want to see that instead of this. Oh my God. And that was only the first one, Jack. There's 2 more. Right
Next
now,
up, we
got the Neil Moss incident.
Sunday, March 22nd, 1959, when 20-year-old Oxford philosophy student Oscar Neil Moss, along with 7 other people, 4 of whom were part of the British Caving Association, decided to visit Peak Cavern in the village of Castleton, Derbyshire.
That looks pretty cool.
The cave system was well known. However, 2 weeks earlier, the same 4 BCA explorers had discovered a new fissure in a side chamber that was 1,000 feet deep. The 8 explorers entered the cave system in the afternoon. They were equipped with ropes, lamps, helmets, and other necessary caving materials. Upon entering, they discovered the Mucky Ducks section, a wet squeeze tunnel that was frequently flooded.
Who's naming these?
This led them to the Boulder Passage, an easier section where they could stand upright while descending and maneuver around various obstructions. Approximately 493 feet into the passage, a 10-feet climb on the north wall of the upper gallery awaited them. High above the steep...
Doesn't this kind of look like the inside of like a human intestine?
It does, yeah. That is Satan's intestinal butthole right there.
Wait, I don't...
That's a weird way to put it.
I don't know about all that.
It's not heavenly, I'll tell you that. That is the devil's track right there. I'm just telling you, the turds coming out of that intestinal tract, they are big.
That went a different direction than I was expecting. All right, I'll press play now.
Muddy slopes was Pickering Passage, a long, narrow crawl space where you had to stretch your whole body to move through. It concluded with an awkward bend and a muddy sump. Above the eye hole, just large enough to accommodate a human body, laid the next challenge. It led to a thigh-deep, muddy pool that connected to the stalagmite chamber, a vast, beautiful part of the cave.
That's actually pretty cool if you made it there.
Ceiling high enough for a person to stand upright. Despite their fatigue, they approached the newly discovered.
Like that's where I would stop, like right there.
No. 7 steps ago is when you should have stopped, Adam. You don't get through all of that. You would go through the eye hole, bro. This isn't like climbing a mountain where you get to the top and it's like, wow, look at this amazing view. The view is the same the entire way through, bro. You're looking at walls of rocks, bro. You're seeing rocks everywhere.
No, but that area, it's bigger than all the other areas combined. You could actually stand up in it. That would be so sick. Imagine you travel that far down just to see this one beautiful rock. Alex with me.
I'm with Adam.
Yeah,
and also, I'm trying to think of like an invention that can help people not get stuck. What do you guys think of like a rock
that calorie deficit?
A caving suit, right? That is like 3 or 4 inches like thick. So you're caving with this suit on, and then if you ever get stuck, there's a button.
What if you can't reach the button?
That then shrinks the suit. This way you can get through. But it's like, okay, if I can't get through with my suit on, I'm not going through. Like, that's your rule of thumb. What do you guys think of that?
I think that I have common sense and I will never be in a cave, so I will never need that invention.
Alec, I like that. Alec, I like that, and I'm gonna steal that, and I'm not giving you any percentage, and I'm gonna sue you.
Okay.
They're about to come out of the butthole right now.
All right, let's see.
Jack.
The shaft measured around 3.2 feet by 2.3.
See, it doesn't even go anywhere fun. Like, that's where I would stop.
There, but it was estimated to be at least 40 feet deep. To be safe, they decided to deploy a 250 feet climbing ladder.
To be safe.
And Neil volunteered
totally safe.
He started to descend around 3:30 p.m., pushing the ladder ladder before continuing. He went down 12 feet when he met his first challenge, the corkscrew twist. He succeeded in pushing himself into a
Satan's corkscrew
10-foot-long,
twist.
slightly inclined passageway, and then crawled through it, pushing the ladder as he went.
Oh my
Afterwards, he
gosh.
came face to face with a vertical passageway 18 feet deep, a section none had ventured into before. Throughout his descent, he maintained constant communication with his team above. Excited, Moss dropped further down the tunnel, but
I'm okay.
unfortunately,
Still in
he
the
met a boulder
butthole.
there. He knew he couldn't continue descending, so he decided to climb back up. Unfortunately, Moss found himself unable to lift his feet sufficiently to ascend the ladder.
That's like the worst place to get stuck, at the very bottom.
How does that happen? How do you put your feet in a spot where you can't get them out, bro? That had to be this big. That had to be this big.
Have you ever seen that movie where the guy like slipped and then he got his arm stuck for 72 hours?
27 hours. I watch it once a year. Yeah, but that, bro, it would not happen right there. He was able to get his foot through, and then now he's trapped.
Yeah, what if he hit a rock and it did a little rock slide and then his foot is stuck now?
Oh, that's the worst spot to be stuck.
I know, it's awful.
See, if he had my patented shoe on, he would be able to shrink his shoe and get it out.
I think everybody should be like butt naked, just lathered up in baby oil. That's the only way you're slithering through these sections.
Okay, maybe not the naked part, but I do think that the oil part could be good actually for slipping out of these scenarios.
Yes.
Maybe everyone who went to Diddy parties went caving after, and they were all prepping. What do you think? All right,
I'm
let's
definitely
keep going.
suing you. Oh, I'm building up a case.
Became trapped in an elliptical crevice only 18 inches wide. He called out for
That's huge.
assistance, and despite efforts to lift him by pulling on the ladder, it became jammed between the cave surface and his body. Ropes were lowered to help him, but every time they tried to pull him up, they either snapped or got cut by the sharp edge of the rock. His body ended up blocking air from getting into the shaft, so he needed to be rescued immediately before he ran out of oxygen.
His head is
Some
blocking
of the cavers
oxygen.
left to seek more help. Within a few hours, hundreds of volunteers from across
So hold on, I just gotta get this through my head. So like, best case scenario, right? This guy, he goes all the way down through Devil's Corkscrew, all the way through the Satan intestinal cage, and then he goes down into the rectum area of the cave. What's the best case scenario here? Well, what is he gonna find down there that he hasn't seen on the way down?
Diamonds, Jack, diamonds. He's trying to get down to Y9.
Okay, this is
Y9.
this is not Minecraft. This is not Minecraft.
I don't think he's a diamond digger, Alec. I don't think he's one of those. I think that he's just down there for fun,
I think
right?
He's doing
like-
it for the thrill.
Yeah,
He's doing it
it's
for the thrill. Jack.
He's trying to
You don't
touch his
have to-
toe.
High risk, no reward. High risk, no reward. There's no reward.
He gets back up to the top. He goes to the bar's nearby. All of his boys are surrounding him, like hyping him up. A girl comes over. He's like, dude, all my guys, they only went 5,000 feet. I went 5,001.
I twisted my way through the rectum, baby.
And if he finds like a cool room there, then he's got his own like secret room that nobody else can go to.
He can name it too.
Okay, hold on. Hear me out. Alec, you had your invention. I have my invention, right? Cave camera, right? You put a camera on the end of a rope and you just lower it down so you can see what you're getting into, and then you don't have to worry about getting stuck.
But that ruins the thrill. That ruins the whole point of the thrill.
The thrill is killing people, Alec. We've watched 5 videos. Each of them has 5 cave deaths. That's 25 cave deaths that we've witnessed.
Well, Jack, to your point, this was in I think this was in like 1956. So I don't think they had that kind of invention at that point.
True.
True.
This is only for
was
future
just-
incidents.
He was just trying to find a nice circular round room to play patty cake with the boys,
Okay.
where no one else
Alec?
would ever disrupt him. No one is
We're
ever going
moving
to
on,
find you
Alec.
down there.
We're moving on.
Just saying, it's a good spot.
Within a few hours, hundreds of volunteers from across England, along with the Royal Air Force, police, and even the Navy,
Whoa.
joined the rescue effort.
What is the Air
Just a
Force
few
gonna do?
hours after
It's too many
Moss was
people. Underground
trapped,
territory.
The rescuers encountered another obstacle. By this time, the air in the shaft had become polluted by carbon dioxide. Moss became
shoot.
disoriented because
He's
of
been
it,
farting
and he
down
began
there.
behaving irrationally. Witnesses said that he wasn't helping at all, that he didn't seem to care about how serious the situation was, and that he even told the rescuers to take a break to get something to eat. Experienced cavers were sent down the shaft
No
to
way.
rescue Moss, but one by one, they were forced back by the toxic air. 3 of the volunteers even lost consciousness. Finally,
Whoa.
the 4th volunteer, Ron Peters,
crazy.
managed to secure a rope around Moss's chest and began to pull.
Yes,
However,
come
he
on.
soon realized that this only worsened Moss's breathing difficulties. The Royal Air Force brought oxygen tanks to ventilate the shaft, and although the quality
Smart.
of air was marginally improved, it proved to be insufficient. The next morning, 18-year-old June Bailey
whole
arrived
morning?
and suggested attempted breaking Neil's collarbone to help rescue him. However, the toxic air stopped all their efforts, and they had to turn back. By Monday afternoon, roughly 24 hours after Moss entered the cave, he was still breathing, but it started to rain, and the entire cave was evacuated as a precaution. When it stopped, the rescuers went back to the shaft accompanied by a Royal Air Force doctor. They did not hear a sound. Moss was not breathing, and he was declared dead on Tuesday, March 24th, 1959. Throughout the ordeal, Moss's father, Eric Moss, stayed at the entrance and asked that his son's body remain where it was to avoid risking further injury or loss of life during the rescue. The shaft was sealed with rocks from the stalagmite chamber. That chamber, which held the shaft, later became known as the Moss Chamber, his final resting place. The Manatee Springs Cave dive.
Wow.
Dang.
So what you're telling me is that people probably still go there to this day because they renamed it, right? So they didn't shut it down. People still are able to get there, and then they find his grave.
Yeah. It's like a memorial center.
Yeah, pretty much.
Respect.
Oh, gosh, man.
Imagine, like, starting in a cave, and then that doesn't have anywhere to go.
Yeah, he ran out of air. Literally.
Is that what the toxic gas was, you think?
Yeah.
I'm just saying,
the air, he couldn't get air down there.
I would fart as a joke, and then it might get way too serious, and then everyone's like, I can't breathe. And then it's your fault because you farted.
Your own farts and your own exhausts, your own CO2. Yeah, it's a pretty bad way to go out.
Guess the moral of the story is don't tickle devil's butthole.
Yeah, just steer clear, guys. If you see a cave, turn around, go home, watch Netflix.
The Manatee Springs Cave diving tragedy. On March 14th, 2022, a couple of friends, William and Harry, and their respective fathers, George and Jack, decided to visit the Manatee Springs State Park in Florida to do some cave diving. At Manatee Springs State Park, divers need to have full cave diving certification and must dive with a partner who has previous diving experience at Manatee in order to access the cave area. All 4 divers had only the intro to cave diving certification, not the full one. The Manatee Springs system is known for its 4 entry points. Manatee Springs, mainly for open water divers, Catfish Hotel, Sue's Sink, and Freedman's Sink. The cave tunnels below these points extend for thousands of feet, but only Freedman's Sink and Catfish Hotel have an entrance pool for cave divers. The system is called a siphon because water flows like a river from a distant entry point and naturally comes out at Manatee Springs. Due to this flow, cave divers typically enter at one point and exit downstream at another. This type of dive, known as a traverse, is more challenging because divers must know 2 pathways instead of just one. Entering a siphon and a traverse system was only allowed for full certified cave divers.
If you go the wrong way,
they decided to.
If you go the wrong way, you're going to be basically going the wrong way for thousands of feet, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and you got to swim upstream. You have to swim against the current.
Yeah, you would think that when you're down there, you would be able to feel the current, but I have a weird feeling because they're only intro cave divers, they're not gonna know what they're doing. And then they're gonna get all flustered down there. They're gonna be like, what's going on? What's going on? And then they go the wrong way, and then it's too late.
Yeah, I think what could happen too is because they're going against the current, they might not be good enough swimmers to get to the end before they run out of oxygen. So they might get like 70% there and then run out of oxygen, and then they're just cooked.
So you think that they're actually trying to go through the other cave system on purpose?
I think
the wrong way? Oh god.
Yeah, they already.
We'll see.
I mean, they broke one rule. Why not break another?
Regardless, they decided to enter the system at Freedman's Sink and planned to exit at Catfish Hotel. They started their dive at 11:17 a.m. Each diver equipped with 2 air tanks, both filled to 3,800 psi. Since the tunnels were about 100 feet deep, roughly 4 atmospheres of pressure, the air was compressed to 1/4 of its original volume and consumed at 4 times the surface rate. They all carried both primary and backup light sources, as well as dive computers to track their depth, heart rate, movement, and time. Additionally, William and Harry had a GoPro in their head to document the entire dive.
So this is
William
recent.
and Harry took the lead, with their dads following closely behind. The gentle pull of the water from Freedman's Sink helped them cover the 1,700 feet distance to Catfish Hotel.
So far, so
After
good.
the first 900 feet, they came to an exit line at Sue's Sink. A rope tied to a rock marked the spot, and light from the surface was seeping into the tunnel. This exit was meant for emergencies only, because it wasn't set up for divers, but for campers. Their planned exit, Catfish Hotel, was 700 feet away. They kept diving and eventually reached the end of the route near Manatee Springs, but they couldn't see the exit line to Catfish Hotel. Confused, they started searching for any light coming from above, but found nothing. Fathers and sons teamed up and decided to return by following the line. At that moment, George had 3,000 psi of air remaining, which was enough to exit safely. However, the return trip turned out to be more difficult than expected.
Yeah, because
they were moving against the current, so their air consumption increased rapidly as their breathing rate went up. Finally, George spotted the exit at Sue's Sink and noticed light leaking from the surface. George and his son William emerged from the system at 12 p.m. However, their friends didn't make it out. Something had gone wrong. William wanted to dive back down to find Harry and Jack, but George insisted insisted on calling 911 instead. Harry and Jack had apparently missed the exit at Sue's
No!
sink. Their lighting
How?
Why
equipment
would they not
washed out the
wait
natural
there?
light leaking from the
Oh
surface,
my gosh,
and
so much went
boulders
wrong.
further blocked it, so they didn't see the exit. They continued diving desperately for another 20 minutes, searching for any exit. Finally, Harry spotted the light at Friedman's sink. Rushing
Okay.
ahead along the guideline, he looked back to see his dad's camera light following him. Harry managed to exit the system at 12:20 p.m. with one tank completely empty and the other below 1,500 psi.
Where's the dad?
But
Where's
his
the
father
dad?
Jack did not emerge.
No!
William and George
Why?
met up with Harry at Friedman's sink, and they talked about why they had missed the exit at Catfish Hotel. They later realized there was no upline leading to Catfish Hotel. Deep inside the cave, they could see light from the surface, but it was partly blocked by a 10-foot deep passage arranged in a double L shape, a detail they wouldn't have known without prior
Two
experience.
Ls.
In fact, many divers enter through Catfish Hotel and exit at Friedman's sink because it's easier, even though they have to dive against the current. Cave rescuers arrived around 12:50 p.m. and found Jack's lifeless body just 100 feet from the exit at
Of
Friedman's
course, it
sink.
was Jack
Both
that
of his
died.
He was only 100 feet.
I don't get why the first group that left didn't wait for the other group. Like, just wait there.
The second one too, like they were right next to each other, and then he saw the light, but the light can travel for a long time. It's like if he knew, he could have saved him.
Right, like as you're like going back up, why would you not like keep looking back down?
What about the dad's son that was there? He didn't wait for his dad.
That's what I'm saying.
That's what
yeah.
we're literally what we're
No,
talking
that was
about.
no. You're talking about the first one.
No, we're talking
I
about the
was, and then
second.
Jack started talking about the second
Oh.
one.
Yeah, with the son saw the dad. He saw the flashlight. The flashlight could travel for a little bit, but like he had to be close enough to see the flashlight, and then he just ditched him.
I would just grab my dad, buy whatever I could get, and just.
Well, yeah. I feel like when you're down there, like you gotta stay close to your buddy, and that's probably why they don't let intro cave divers down there, because they don't know what to do in this situation.
Oh my gosh.
Once again, another preventable cave tragedy if they were more experienced, and also if they just didn't do it. If you just stay inside, or if you just don't go into a cave, this will never happen. Don't go into a cave. No caves.
Instead, watch this video.
It's a lot safer.